For attending the Planning Commission meeting on August 3rd. I'd like to call a meeting to order. I'm Shane Blazer, the chairman. We have Jay Bemke present. We have Daniel Hansen present. Mr. Kearns is present here, and if everybody online could kind of roll call, is that Susan Feith, Tom Bray, and anybody else they could identify themselves, please? Is Shane Burkhart or Lee Talon? Are they? Can they? Susan, can you hear me?
Try again.
Susan, can you hear me? Tom, can you hear me?
Hi, I don't know who's talking there. I can hear you. This is Susan.
Okay.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you. This is Shane. I just wanted to make sure that you could hear us online. So we have
Yeah.
Susan Feith, Tom Bray, and could the other callers identify themselves, please? Is Lee Tao present or Shane Burkhart? Do we have enough?
Jeff, can you confirm that you can hear us? Jeff Disher?
I can hear you, yes. Sorry, I had to go off mute.
Great, thank you. So 5 does give us a quorum, Mayor.
Okay, thank you. Let's call a meeting to order then, which we have already. Our first item of business is the approval of the report from July 6, 2020 Planning Commission meeting. What are your wishes? We have a motion by Bemke to approve the minutes. We have a second by Mr. Hansen. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Our first item of next item of business is Plan 20-0559 Disher Residential LLC, Jeff Disher, for a request to register a non-conforming fitness use general service within the M1 General Industrial Zoning District at 1421 Pepper Avenue, parcel ID 3412380. Mr. Kearns.
If it's okay with the body, I will discuss items 2 and 3 together, as they're essentially the same, just a two-step process here from the applicant. And as you've picked up likely already reading the staff report, this item was before the commission last month, and the request then was to register a daycare use within an existing facility. However, as we were made aware of some more information, the daycare use was not appropriate to register because it was an accessory use to a principal fitness use. So I think the commission previously acted appropriately in denying such use, and Common Council also confirmed that denial. However, there is another mechanism by which the applicant can request the approval for what ultimately would be a daycare use within the facility, and that is outlined in these 2 steps. The first of which is to register the non-conforming use, the previous use, the fitness use, within the M1 General Industrial District. Again, the fitness use is classified as general service and is non-conforming, meaning that it is a prohibited use within the district but because it previously existed, it is allowed to continue if the use doesn't cease for a period beyond 1 year or 12 months. In this case, the use has not, and we would recommend that, that use could continue, and would recommend approving the registration of that use. The second step here is once the registration occurs of a nonconforming use, you can request to convert that nonconforming use to a less intense type of use. In this case, the conversion that's requested after the registration is a adult daycare type use. And again, without going into too many of the details in the staff report, staff feels as though the adult daycare use is less intense. We don't feel it'll draw as much traffic to the site. It is less operating hours, more regular operating hours than the fitness type use previously, and therefore we think it'll be less detrimental to the neighborhood. And again, we would also recommend, for those reasons, approving the conversion of the nonconforming use. So that's what we have before us today, and again, we as staff, after our review, would recommend approving both of the items before you regarding this.
Thank you, Mr. Kearns. So our first item would be to register the non-conforming use. Does the commission have any discussion on that, or wish to make a motion and have discussion?
This is Susan here. I'm having difficulty understanding the voice is muffled, and since we have no visual screen that shows who's speaking, could the people speaking please identify themselves?
Yes, we can do that, Susan. This is Shane. So that was Kyle Kearns that gave an update. This is Shane Blazer. I'm requesting a motion or further discussion on the item to register the non-conforming fitness use.
I'll make a motion.
So Shane,
Go ahead.
Go ahead, Susan.
if you're asking for discussion, or are you looking for a second so that discussion can be held?
We're looking, I guess, for a motion.
Okay, I heard somebody make a motion. I would second it for the sake of opening discussion.
We have Bemke who made a motion, Susan Feith seconding that. I'd entertain any discussion on the item at this point.
Yes, I have a question for Mr. Disher, and that is, has he started the process or sought approval from the state for the change in use of the building? And have they given any indication of the steps that would be necessary to bring the structure into compliance for an adult daycare?
And I'm not sure how to answer that question, only the fact that I'm not aware of anything that I have to make it permitted or applicable to be used as a for the state, I guess. Yeah. So.
My name is Pam Swope, and I am one of the owners of For You Adult Day Service. And I can address the issue with, I'm thinking, Susan, you're talking about any regulations or any statutes that we would have to follow for it to be licensed or allowed.
Well, I'm talking more about the requirements that would be necessary under the building code for the structure itself.
Okay, because I can tell you that from the aspect of the operation of a day service, that building, I know we would be able to use it. There wouldn't be, from our end, any state issues with it at this point. I mean, the space would be allowable and the structure itself. So a building code, I don't know, that would be more Jeff's department. But from our end, the building would be optimal just because it's a very open space and of sound structure, and all the doors meet the ADA requirements, and we have the spacious bathrooms and everything else. So,
Yeah, I don't see there being any issue with building code wise that it would be any restriction of being a adult daycare or whatever that I could see. And I'm in the construction business actually, and I can't see it being an issue. And I guess I'd cross that hurdle if it did come to that point. But I don't believe there would be any restrictions because it is a public building that was used for this, similar situation. So.
A question directed to Kyle. Have you investigated what would be necessary for state approval for this use?
Yeah, I can address the question. Typically, whenever there's a change of use in a commercial building, the commercial building code does classify the use. In this case, I believe there will be a different use classification. So going from a daycare type use, or going from a fitness type use to a daycare type use likely does have a different use classification within the commercial code. We typically, Plan Commission don't get into the level of details in the building code because those are, regardless of Plan Commission's action, in any request, the building code requirements have to be met. So in this case, if, for example, there are different, occupancy numbers or different exiting requirements for a daycare use as compared to a fitness use, those items would have to be addressed and would have to be met aside from Plan Commission review. The same with fire code as well. I do not specifically know what those changes are, but they would be required to meet whatever those applicable changes are in the building code.
Thank you.
Anyone have anything further? Mr. Bemke.
Mr. Disher, this is Jay Bemke. So the last time we met, I believe you discussed the possibility of this being a daycare / storage facility. Is this going to be daycare only now?
The building itself, yes, the way it looks at this point. So
Okay, thank you.
the property, the surrounding property around the building, we may look at additional storage units, or that would be added at a later date.
Thank you.
Anyone else have anything further? Seeing and hearing none, we have a motion and a second to approve the registering the non-conforming fitness use. Seeing no further discussion, let's cast our ballots. All in favor say aye. Aye. And those that, and then nay. Motion carried. Next item is the Plan 20-0553 Disher Residential LLC, Jeff Disher. Public hearing and action on a request to convert the non-conforming use to a daycare use within the M1 General Industrial Zoning District at 1421 Pepper Avenue, parcel ID 3412380. So we'll open up the public hearing, and I'll call 3 times for anybody who wants to speak in favor of changing on converting the non-conforming use to a daycare. I'll call a second time. Anyone want to speak in favor of converting the non-conforming use to daycare? And lastly, last time I'll call for anybody that wants to speak in favor of converting the non-conforming use to daycare. Seeing none, anybody wish to speak against converting the non-conforming use to a daycare? Calling again, anybody wish to speak against converting the non-conforming use to a daycare? And lastly, does anyone want to speak against converting the non-conforming use to a daycare? Okay, that will close our public hearing. Entertain a motion. I guess I'll make the motion, this is Shane, to approve the request to convert the non-conforming use to a daycare use within the M1 General Zoning District at 1421 Pepper Avenue. We have a second by Bemke. Is there any further discussion?
I guess this is Susan again. In reference, Kyle, can you speak to the idea that there would be any conditional or conditions put upon this conversion depending upon the state's response to the review of the building plan so that it passes conformance?
With regards to the building code requirements, it's likely not necessary to place those conditions via the Plan Commission approval, and I also don't think it's probably appropriate, just given that the building code stands on its own, and regardless of, again, Plan Commission's review and approval, those building code requirements have to be met. If not, then they won't be granted occupancy, or they'll be pulled their occupancy. Again, no different than, failure to meet fire code, exiting, lighting, things of that nature. Typically, again, with any change of occupancy, it's the property owner's responsibility to comply with those applicable codes, and then it's our office, the building inspection office, that confirms that those codes are being met. It unfortunately is not our job to tell them what the code requirements are. We ensure compliance, but we don't, specifically design the rooms in the building and go in there prior to occupancy. That is the responsibility of the owner or applicant in this case.
Thank you for that.
Does anyone have anything further? Seeing none, we have a motion and a second to convert the non-conforming use to a daycare use. All in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Next item is Community Development Community Development Department discussion on the amendment to the land use matrix, Appendix A within the zoning code regarding the review required for certain commercial and industrial use. Mr. Kearns.
So this item, again, is for discussion only. I think if the discussion today is favorable, and if this is pulled out at council and discussed as well, the next step would be to bring it back before the commission for a specific amendment. Essentially, right now, our zoning code for almost every use, and on the screen here, I've got the use table up, and I provided the use table as part of the packet. But for almost every use, it identifies a review criteria. And if you're looking at the use pages or the use table, whether you're here or at home, on I think it's the third column, you can see there's abbreviations, and they oftentimes stand for certain reviews, whether it's architectural review, site plan review, zoning permit review, plan of operations review. And there are several uses where, there's review. It's pretty frequent that a new use does not require some level of review. And regardless if it goes to Plan Commission or not, those reviews are happening. So when we talk about reviewing landscaping, reviewing the parking standards, reviewing the architectural standards, reviewing the stormwater standards and any other standards within the zoning code, the reviews happening internally, when you see the designations on the uses within the use table of AR, SP, PO, those review standards trigger Plan Commission review. And there are many uses that, in my opinion, may not need Plan Commission review above and beyond the normal requirements within the zoning code. And some that come to mind are, your office type uses, your retail, your small retail type uses, your restaurant type uses. The examples that I'll reference are ones recently that went through this body and were approved subsequently, which were the optical clinic on 8th Street as well as the coffee shop on 8th Street. And one of those, the coffee shop, went through this body twice for some major changes. Generally, those are very simple requests. Once they come to our office, we perform site plan review, the zoning review, and then after those are met, they will go to the building inspectors for building inspector review, and possibly to the state Department of Administration for building review if the building is over a certain size. Again, the added step in almost every case, as you can see within the use table, is the review via Plan Commission for, in most cases, the architecture, the site, and the plan of operations. So again, as you scroll down the list, almost every use requires that. And I think it might be a little bit too cumbersome. It might be a little much. And when we look as planners at what other communities are doing, I would say about 2/3, if it's a permitted use, such as those that I referenced, they don't require Plan Commission review. If it's a conditional use, obviously you need the conditional use permit. But then there's about 1/3 of communities, Madison comes to mind, where, no matter what the use is, if it's new, it has to go through a pretty rigorous review process, and sometimes going to multiple committees at the city level, which again can be cumbersome to certain developments, can hold up those developments. When we're talking about, the building season that we have in Wisconsin, it can be the difference of, 30 to 60 days, which can be very impactful on a tight development schedule for some of these development projects. So I would be in favor and would be in support of reducing or simplifying some of the review and removing some of these uses from the specific Plan Commission review. Now, I will state that there are instances that I would still be in favor of. For example, the optical clinic and the coffee shop were required also to come before this body to get a reduction in their parking in the front yard. And I would be in favor of keeping some of those specific Plan Commission reviews within the code. But if, for example, they did not, or they met that standard, that they would not have to come to Plan Commission. For example, if they had 50%, or in this case, it'd have to be 30% of their parking up front and the remaining 70 in the back, they met that requirement, they then would not have to come before this body for review. And I think that's what I would support, and I think if again, we receive favorable feedback today, I would come back with a specific amendment that would walk you through how those changes would occur within the zoning code.
I think we've talked about this a little bit before. I think streamline the process, make it easier for the people that are doing the applications, and keep the process moving. So if you want to go ahead and put something together, specific together, I would be all in favor of that.
Thank you, Mr. Bemke. Does anyone else have anything they'd like to add? Thoughts?
This is Susan here, and I'm unfamiliar, Kyle, with the process by which residents could question or be informed about or object to certain aspects of a plan under a modified situation. Are there still avenues for that to happen?
There are always avenues for a property owner to provide comment on development. I think what the Plan Commission requirement allows for is a more, I guess, open process for that to happen. When Plan Commission, for example, reviews an item, they are reviewing it on a set of standards. That set of standards is outlined within the zoning code, and that's the same set of standards that I'm reviewing for compliance with when I approve a site plan or when I approve the architecture to a building. I think, right, because that's happening at the staff level right now, it's also happening at the Plan Commission level. And I think if a property owner were to come in and identify, you know, that one of those standards was not met, for example, if they had 60% parking in the front and the code only allows 50%, obviously that's a violation of the code, and they should either meet the requirement or their application should be denied. Right now, there are the two sets of review, staff's review and the Plan Commission review. I think I would be in favor of and am in seeking feedback on, for many items, just having a staff review and not necessarily the Plan Commission review. There will always be, you know, comment and concern from members of the public. What I think we have to be careful with is denying items for subjective reasons, which is why I put together very thorough staff reports to outline what the review criteria is, and you know, based on that review criteria, whether it's been met is what we should base our recommendation off of. And that's going to happen regardless of if it comes to Plan Commission or not. That's my job as the zoning administrator for the city. And I will continue to do that regardless of what route we take. But hopefully that shines a little light on the question or the comment.
Thank you.
Does anyone have anything further? Hearing none, why don't we leave it at that? And Mr. Kearns, if you'd put something together for us to review and kind of highlight what your thoughts are, that we can take a look at it on paper.
I will do that.
Okay. So we're at our last item on our agenda, which is adjournment. We have a motion by Bemke, second by Mr. Hanson to adjourn. All in favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Thank you very much for attending.